now got this crossover plumbed in and connected up, tested, and it's working well. So just the two on the other side to go, but I'm still I do have a couple on order from different places, but they haven't shown up yet. Looks like large radius Electro Frog Code 100 turnouts from Pico are still hard to come by. And with the layout finally starting to grow and more track going down and two new loops on the way, I decided it was finally time to create my first panel. This one's done using Layout Editor, which took a bit of getting used to for the first half hour or so. It was really quite frustrating, but you do pick it up. I've seen there are requests for functionality. There's no undo button on it, which is, especially when you're starting out, it's very frustrating because I make a lot of mistakes. I'm just sat there constantly hitting Control Z and the mistakes I've made don't get reversed. But you do get used to it quite quickly. I think I'm getting the hang of it now. And it is, the end result is worth it as well. I think it's immediately starting to show how useful it is. These are, each of those black dots is a crossover, so it's a combination of two turnouts, which was really quite easy to configure. And now I've got it set to be black dots. I think it's quite visible as well, the state of the turnout. So if I find my mouse button and click one of them, it's quite audible. Obviously the motor's running and the two relays swapping, but yeah, it's really quite, at least usage of it is intuitive. If the design side of it maybe leaves a little bit to be worked on. I have had a tinker with slowing down the point motors, not really for reasons of realism or even for sound. It's just they seem so powerful and violent. I was always a little bit worried when they threw themselves at full velocity that they were going to rip themselves out of the mount. So I've slowed them down, added little steps so that they're a little bit more gentle in their movement, and I do think it makes a bit of a difference. I'll try and demonstrate it here. I've got my new little panel on the tablet. This is a tiny little tablet, it doesn't fit much of the panel on, but it's still really quite useful. One of the more powerful aspects of JMRI, I think, is it has web servers and all kinds of servers that it can offer up. The web server gives you the facility from any handheld device to get control of any of the screens or panels that JMRI currently has open. So you can see down there on the monitor, there's this simple panel that I've built is open. So down here on the tablet, I can actually access that panel and use it in a touch screen as well. So these blocks represent the crossovers. This one on the right is this one. So if I hit it, the points should gently move. Yeah, there they go. Just a little bit more gentle, and it just feels somehow less less violent. And down here on the touch screen, when I press the crossover, it goes red to show that it's open and black again once it's closed. Finally have my hands on two long radius Electro Frog points, so they're now down with motors underneath, but just need extension cables crimping. I put extra long piano wire on, especially on this one. The reason being, it was so close to the set of points over there, and that's all fastened down, and I made the mistake over the other side of, when I needed to join the two up, kind of picking the two of them up like this, because there's not much space. You have to sort of lift them up to get a bit of space to get the fish plates in. And of course, as soon as I lifted this up, it the piano wire kind of came out of the hole, and it's not the end of the world. You can spend 5 minutes jiggling it around, and in the end you'll get it back through again. But it just seems a bit of a waste of time to spend all that time getting the thing through and in place, and then losing the wire and having to thread it through again. So I just thought, if I do a cable at least twice as long as it needs to be, when this is all in and finished and I come to cut this one down here, then it's not waste, because I've got a full size one, at least full size one, that I can reuse somewhere else. And yeah, it just means that this thing, no matter how high I lift it, it's certainly not going to come off the end of there. As it turned out, I didn't need it anyway, because what I did with this board having come out, and so I could turn it upside down and fit the motors, I just fitted it a little, or put it down a little bit too far over that way, and then because I had these two bits of track already down, I just slid the board underneath them and gradually closed these two connections in, sliding the board in that direction until the fish plates met and the rails went into the fish plates, and then one last push and they all sort of settled down. I didn't need to lift anything up in the end. I'm sure I've moaned about this before, but I'll have one more moan about it. In situations like this, where this is a crossover so that something that's on the inside line can get up onto the incline, it would be ideal to have a double slip in there, and then that set of points moves much further forward, and it's effectively just a great big crossover for any trains coming from that direction, or obviously coming from that direction as well. Problem is, Pico don't do a code 100 electrofrog double slip, and I can't find anyone else who does, so I just can't use double slips on this layout, which is a shame. And another vote of confidence for the insulation. We've had a pretty intense heat wave the last week or two, and although the temperature has got up to 30 at one point, it's usually been pretty habitable in here. I mean, when it was 27 up here, it was 27 everywhere else in the house as well, and 25 outside, so I can't really complain at that. It's never going to be cooler in here than it is outside or in the rest of the house. But it does make the place habitable, and when it's hot, this isn't the same kind of 30-degree heat as I used to get in the old loft. The humidity isn't there, it's still quite breathable. It's not that wall of heat and unbearable heat that I used to get in a completely uninsulated loft. In fact, up until this heat wave started, the highest temperature on this was still the 26 that it recorded on April the 9th when I was in the old loft. It had managed from April the 9th until middle of June maybe to not hit the same temperature, anywhere near the same temperature in here that it had been in the old loft that day. So yeah, it was hard work and it was a bit of money, but I'm absolutely, I'd do it again without hesitation. I've got an extension cable crimped now, and it's plugged into the PWM driver board over the other side, over there. Come through that hole, sat down there ready to be connected to this. I've learned a lot of lessons the hard way with these PWM driver boards and servo motors. One lesson is this motor sat underneath here ready to connect up to this, and previously I would have just connected the two wires up. The issue with that is I don't know what PWM value pin 6 on that board, if you're zero indexed, is set to, and these motors, these servo motors inside these mounts, if they go too far in either direction, they pop out of the arm, and usually it's a case of then having to dismount it and get it down and fix it all up and put it back in again, which is a pain. So it's always worth when you know what pin you're going to connect to, and when I'm going to connect the extension cable up to the motor, make sure that that pin on that board is set to 1500, which is right in the middle and at a safe value. Because if it's set beyond 2000 in one direction or 1000 in the other, when I connect, because I know that this arm is set to 1500 at the minute, because that's what I set it to before I put it in the mount, and then again after I put it in the mount. But as soon as this motor gets connected up to the board, if that pin has a value greater than 2000 or less than 1000, substantially at least in either direction, then this arm will suddenly move, and it will move out of the bounds that the mount arm keeps it in, and the two will become disconnected, and it'll just cost me even more time. So I'm going to get the laptop out, I'm going to connect it up, and I'm going to make sure that the pin for this motor is set to 1500 before I connect it up. Before I can do anything else now, I really need to get these two gaps filled in. These corner pieces are lined up pretty well at the other side, so that's where they need to start. So I just need 2 pieces of track cut to fill these 2 gaps, which will then enable me to get the 2 ends of the points fastened down and finalise the calibration values, because they might differ slightly once they're fastened down and can't move. Obviously with a motor moving, if the end of the point isn't actually fastened down, that has freedom to move with it as well, which can affect the calibration values. Once it's fastened down and can't move, it's a good idea to calibrate it again, just to make sure that I'm not ending up with a value that the motor can't move to. This is an old Hornby 1990s Class 91. Started out its life with a Ringfield motor. It has now got a CD motor attached to it. But it's pretty impressively hauling 7 coaches in a DVT up the incline, and really not hesitating for a second. Once I got this near side set of points down, I was all ready to test, because there's a bit more track sort of heading off around that corner as well now. I was all ready to test, had a train up at the top of the hill, ready to bring it down, went to change those points right in the middle, the first 2 sets of points I ever laid, the first 2 motors I ever put in, and one of them didn't move. And that led to a chain of events that involved me, I think, replacing maybe 4 or 5 motors, having that board upside down, changing switches, taking switches out, putting them back in again, and then eventually having to put the board back in, line all the track up and connect it all again. I did record it all, it's just too much of it, and it's essentially all boring because it's just motors breaking. So having looked at it all now, there's no way I'm going to get it in a video, so I think what I'll do is just put the absolute bare minimum kind of highlights in the video. It'll mean that there won't be much continuity. I'll talk about things that I'd mentioned before that I won't have mentioned before in the video, but it's probably better doing it that way than including everything, which is just depressing, and if I watch through it all again I'll probably cry anyway. So upcoming is a very short edited set of highlights or lowlights of my last 2 or 3 days of servo motor nightmares. More technology wars, unfortunately. This is now a replacement servo in this point motor. This was the first one ever fitted, index number 0, but it's gone, failed. I think I know what's happening. I think it's to do with the mount and the way the mount gets cut out of its 3D printed frame. If any little straggling bits of plastic, matter, whatever it is that comes out of a 3D printer, kind of overhang and get caught on each other and on the moving arm. I think the motor can't move the arm. There's a bit of plastic stuck, can't get past it, and the motor just sits there trying, and in the end burns out, because the motor that I pulled out of there, its gears were all shot and burned. It didn't move properly. So I think that's what's going on. The only problem with this one is it's in the most awkward possible place imaginable. It needs to be on the near set of points there, but where it is underneath, where I need to fit it, I would have to get the other side of all this cable. I can't get my little board back and screwed across here, because this board is on that rafter and stopping me. So I think if I go that route, if I try and get underneath, if I go around the other side, I'll probably do it in the end, but it's going to be a lot of stretching and crawling, and I don't fancy much of that. So I think I'm just going to have to lift this board up that these sets of points are on. There's a motor over there that's been quite noisy recently, so I'm going to double test that and see if it's still noisy, and if it is, I'll swap that out while I've got the board upside down. It shouldn't be too bad. The incline track will unscrew and come away easily enough. And the near side track is easy enough, because it's just lots of long pieces of track. They'll come apart easily enough. It's the bits of track here in between the two sets of points. I think what I'll do again is, once I get this board up, I'll replace the piano wire that's been cut down to size with some long piano wire. So again, I can lift these points up to get them connected up to the pieces of track, because if I end up lifting these pieces of track up too high, they're going to pull the points that are settled on the other side out up as well. Somewhat frustratingly, I've now got this board uprooted and upside down. I only really got this side finished a couple of days ago, so it's a little bit annoying. But I've got to pull it all up again. I've had to pull a few cables out as well, so that I could get the thing up, moved and turned upside down, and there's a lot of uprooted track. I'm going to have to go back and get settled back down again. I've now got this motor mount seated again, and the one at the end there did start making noises and buzzing while I was testing them, so I've swapped that out for a new one as well. So hopefully I now have 4 working and quiet servos. While it's upside down, I'm going through each one and setting the, if I just move over here a bit, setting the micro switch positions, so that when the arm is leaning in either direction, it's making full contact with the switch and pressing it. I'd never really done that before, because it's quite awkward to do underneath, and there's only these 2 that use the micro switches for electro frog polarity, and I did get those aligned, but every other set of points still has the single switch, which is going to be used as a sensor for points positioning for JMRI. I just haven't got around to connecting them up to any Arduinos yet, just because there's always something more important to do. So I'm going to go through each of these, because I know their configuration and positions. So I'm going to switch the arm like I've done with this one, switch the arm in each direction, and just then adjust. You can move these switches along on these little tracks here, so it's just a case of loosening the screws and moving the switch so that it's sat comfortably touching the arm with the switch pressed when the arm is obviously on its side. Having now moved the arm to the other configured position where the point's thrown, there's a very obvious gap there
between where the arm rests and the switch doesn't get pressed. This is the electro frog polarity one as well, so it really needs to be pressed. The sound of the clicking's there when it gets pressed and released, so this micro switch needs to be moved along so that it's in contact with this arm. It feels safer to leave these micro switches at the same angle as the arm is when it makes contact with them, just because it keeps the little switch, this thing here, pointing in the same direction as the arm. This arm, this 3D printed arm here, the bottom of it is ridged, and it's quite easy for this end of the switch there to get caught in one of the ridges when they're in contact like this, and when it gets caught it can jam the arm and stop it moving and end up, I think that's how I lost the point motor behind it, the servo motor behind it. I think it burnt out trying to move when it was jammed against the arm. So if I keep the switch at the same angle as the arm, there's much less chance of this arm, the little end of the switch, getting caught in one of these ridges. The camera's looking at me. There is a gap. Oh no, it thinks about it and then it moves there, which probably isn't a good sign as well. And is being pressed. Let's have another look at what that's doing. Frog polarity is getting comfortably pressed. And then at this point this one seems a mile away, and then does it move a bit more? No? Sure I saw it closer last time. Is this moving? No. More of a worry. It's very difficult not to really start losing patience with these servos. I'd got this one in, I'd got it aligned, it was happy, it was quiet, I'd tested both extremes. I'd just adjusted the micro switch to sit nicely with it when it's in position, went downstairs to get something. As I came back up into the loft I could hear the loud buzzing noise of a failing servo motor, and so immediately switched the power off, and I've come to this one. It's boiling hot, stinks of burning metal, burning plastic, so that's another one gone. All I can say is I'm very relieved that I lifted this board up to start working on this, because if I'd started going underneath it would have just been one problem after another. So I guess this one, I can't rely on it now after it's been this hot and it's made that kind of noise, so this one's going to have to come out as well. I'll put another one in and try and work out what caused the horrible buzzing noise that it was making. It's probably restricted movement. I had aligned that right hand micro switch, as you look at it, after the arm had moved into position, so I don't think the switch can possibly be restricted movement in that direction, because it had long since stopped moving when I moved the micro switch. But whatever it was, the motor wasn't happy at all, so once it's cooled down a bit I'll take it out, put another one in, start again. So I finally made the decision, and now I've made it, I'm thinking, why didn't I make this decision a while ago? I'm still having problems, I think, on these mounts where there's a micro switch on each side. I think there just isn't enough freedom of movement for the arm and the motors are burning out. So I'm removing the micro switches from both of these points, which were the only two that ever had micro switches for frog polarity. Everything else is done by relay. There are two spaces in the relay for these two anyway, so get rid of the frog polarity micro switches and hopefully that will remove some of the problems I've had consistently with these two of motors burning out. I'm slowly edging closer to completing the circuits again. The point motors are still working, the switches are still working, nothing is burning, nothing's screaming. So far so good. So now it's a case of getting this board back up and aligned and connected. What I'm going to try to do is on this side it's leaning up slightly over there, which gives me a bit of a gap here. So I'm going to try to slowly edge, there's a connection up there as well, slowly edge this board towards that one and align these fish plates and rails and see if I can just get them all connected that way. The main reason being this is still the original wire on this set of points, and if I have to lift it up at all to connect it up to this bit of rail, it's going to come, the blade's going to come off the wire, and it can just take anything from a minute to an hour to a day to get those back on again. That side I've still left that massive long piano wire sticking through the blade, so I can lift that one as high as I like. So this one will slide in, and then hopefully I'll just be able to get them connected on the other side by wiggling. I still think I can smell burning. Oh, there are two fish plates on there. Oh, that's sounding good. No, clicked out. Go on. Oh, that looks good. Everybody's still happy. That looks a bit loose. Find that you still need to just slightly guide these track screws in with your finger so that they go in straight. As soon as they go in at an angle, if you don't follow the angle with the screwdriver, it breaks the thread on the screw, which pretty much makes it a nail. And here I am back to the future. So the Deltic's still up at the top of the hill. The track is now all hopefully connected back up. I've done continuity tests on the frogs. The only thing I've got left to do that I need to remember to do is cut that huge piano wire off there. But I think it's all connected up. All the connections seem good. So now it's just a case of starting the old Deltic back up again and seeing if it will navigate across all of the relayed point work. this is the view from the other end. Now I've got my large radius points in, I'll be able to lay track all the way down here across the bridge and around to these two sets of curve points here, which are fastened down and cabled up, so they're going to be the next ones to get motors. The far side will go across under that spirit level, another set of points, and then hopefully get two lines going under the edge of the baseboard there once I've replaced those circular struts with thin offcuts of ply. Similar kind of thing with this one, the far side, that one will go off, that'll be the bypass line that will bypass the actual yard. The inside turnout will go into lots of sets of points with as many lines as I can realistically, sensibly fit in. I'm not going to squish them in so that they're difficult to work with, and the storage lines will go all the way down and meet with the incoming storage lines at the other side. Well, that's everything connected up again and working for now. Obviously I do need a big think about these servo motors and whether they're just too unreliable for what I need them for. I seem to be going to a bit of a fourth bridge thing at the minute, as soon as and that's just on these four. As soon as I've finished the fourth one I seem to be back fixing the first one again, but there is still a very distinct possibility that it's caused by me, by positioning of the little micro switches, by pushing them too far into the points where they won't go, so and also catching on the mounts as well. I think there's still a good few possibilities that it's actually me causing these failures, in which case it's worth persevering, because at some point hopefully I'll iron my own faults out and actually start using them properly. So I'll stick with them, persevere with them, hopefully get some time on track now. I'm following this one all the way around. I am round to here, so it's onto the yard. I've started placing points where I think they're going to go for the yard, and it's roughly similar down the other end. The other end is coming across that bridge now. If I just get high enough to show it on the camera, so it's at those curved points at the other end. So it's now a case of clearing the workbench and getting the yard in.